We do have to stay on schedule, and we're now running a few minutes late. I will take just 2 questions from the audience. Please.
Ken, there's one right here.
Okay, please. Right, and then I'll go back. Please, yes.
Hi, I'm Samira Daniels. This discussion of partisanship, I was wondering, you know, usually it's about the Republican Party and the conservative liberal dichotomy is used as a framework. And I just wonder, I am also in touch with the communities that have been taking on mainstream science, and many of them are liberal, very highly educated, and you know, controversies over methods, the use of vaccines and so forth, and so I'm trying to understand. Are you suggesting that it's partisanship itself, which is, or is it the larger issue of somewhat more suspicion or about science as such?
I'll take a crack at that. No, I'm not suggesting that it's a generalized skepticism about science and reasoning. What I'm suggesting is that when a political party has developed a reputation or a stance on a particular policy issue, the adherents of that party are going to follow the cues supplied by the party leaders. So in the case of immigration, when it's well known what the Republican Party position is today, rank and file Republicans are going to adopt that position and are going to be extremely resistant to change, even when it's framed in terms of evidence and facts.
I'm going to read a question from the Twitterer. Interesting that we're talking about political polarization and implicit bias at the colloquium. What happens when those who represent science are a homogeneous, clustered group of self-selecting individuals with nothing in common with their various public audiences? That's a serious question. I obviously have to the premise of it is I don't know what else we would be. We're self-selected because we chose this as our career, and we're published scholars, and we're having a discussion about how you communicate the results of our research and so forth. So in that sense, we have to be self-selected. But then it goes on to say we have nothing in common with our various audiences. Well, that's exactly what the colloquium is about. To what extent can we organize ourselves? Indeed, starting with Doug, who has spent a very high percentage of his career testifying and blogging and speaking and trying to get out there to sort of interact with the public, for better or for worse, in terms of its impact. But nevertheless, there's a huge major investment. What we heard from the previous panel, the same thing. They've dropped some of their own science in order to kind of engage this communication and so forth and so on. I only mentioned the question because there's a huge gap that we're going to have to get across sooner or later. There's deep suspicion, not deep, I don't know, that overstates it, but there are elements of deep suspicion toward the academic profession and our expertise and so forth and so on. That's just now on the landscape. And so the whole challenge to the colloquium becomes, we got communication of science communication underway before what we just heard hit us with anything like the forcefulness that it's hit us over the last half dozen years. So we now have to make some adjustments to this new landscape. There's simply no doubt about it. So we're going to get questions like this: why are we not engaged with our publics, and so forth and so on. So we just have no choice, it seems to me, but to sort of say, given what we've already learned, how are we going to sort of address situations of this deep polarization, of this deep obfuscation, deliberate misrepresentation, and so forth and so on. We can't just say, we don't like that world. That's the deck that's now been, that's the hand of cards we've been now dealt. And it seems to me we have no choice but to sort of have our own internal conversations about how we can respond to people who really do believe that we're a highly close-knit, self-selected population group which has no connection to or interest in our publics. We don't believe that about ourselves, but it is a belief that is out there. So, thank you.